Hello and welcome to CPR's Clubhouse Live. My name is CPR Jose Ortiz, and I'm being joined by my closest friends. We got Angel Mena, aka Uncle Howdy. Also, we have K7 joining us here, and we're going to be talking professional wrestling. I know that we have a bond when it comes to music, but we even have a bigger bond, and we talk about it behind the scenes when it comes to pro wrestling. And of course, it's WrestleMania season, so we felt like we can get together and have a conversation about the grandest stage of them all. It's the 40th WrestleMania, so we'll be talking about that. But before we get started, I want to go back and find out how you guys got into pro wrestling. So I'll start with Kay. How did you get started with pro wrestling?
The way I started, well, I'm older than the both of y'all, so you know, I'm ancient. As a kid, my mom used to send me to Puerto Rico for the summers, and and I would go to Ponce, and I would spend most of my summers going to see the events that were happening at the time. At the time, wrestlers like Dory and Terry Funk were wrestling in Puerto Rico with Carlos Colon Sr., not Carlos Colon Jr. The Invaders 1 and 2. If you guys know anything about wrestling, Invader 1 was the one that tried to, well, they killed a professional
Bruiser
wrestler.
Brody.
He killed Bruiser Brody. So I used to see the Invaders. I used to see Carlos Colon Sr. He was one of my favorites. Ric Flair, who ended up, who's my, like idol. I saw him wrestle for the first time there. And I became a fan of the heel because the heel was more interesting. Of course, we'd all root for the hero to win, but something about heels for me, the heels in professional wrestling became more interesting to me than anybody else. Then I'd come back home and WWE would be on television. But there was a period of time, that WWE wasn't interesting to me. So I fell in love with, because of freestyle, believe it or not, and performing. If we travel on a Saturday and I'd land in, say, Texas, or if I'd land in Florida, I could turn on the TV and TBS would be on, and I would see the NWA at the time before it turned into WCW. And I became an avid watcher of NWA slash WCW, and that brought me back to my constant love and need to see what wrestling was. Listen, as we all know, we all get laughed at because we know what these are, but these are like as we like to describe it, these are like soap operas for men, if you will.
Yeah, it's also a big part of our culture.
Yes,
it's something that
and it's really a big part of Americana, because it's part of the vaudeville acts of the time. These fake fighting events became synonymous with vaudeville, as it will back in the the 20s and 30s and stuff like that, or even before then. This wrestling goes as far back as the times of Jesus, and you could see it, you could find it, the gladiators. Most of those things, we weren't fed to the lions that quickly. We had to put on a show. So
yeah. Angel Mena, how did you get involved in pro wrestling and the love of it?
Wrestling is something that at an early age, watching Saturday, I would watch a lot of the NWA, WWF as it was known back then. It had a couple things that I liked. Like there were a couple wrestlers that from that era obviously resonated with me, that I remember watching growing up. But most of my favorites, as Kay mentioned, NWA, the precursor to WCW, those wrestlers that, because even when some of those wrestlers that I know have wrestled in both promotions, they've wrestled in WWF and the NWA, WCW. For me, they were their truer self in NWA, WCW. And that is why I gravitated to those characters. And just like Kay, you know, the villains always, you know, they're obviously you like the faces, but every once in a while there comes a villain that you're like, you know, wow, he's the man, you know,
Yeah.
and literally he's the man, you know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
I grew up with people hating Ric Flair because of what he accomplished and all of the great feuds that he he was the consummate heel. You know what I mean? I think watching him now in the last decade or so, I think he's kind of tarnished his legacy a little bit because I think he should have just walked away. But to his defense, you don't walk away from something that you love so much and that you've done for so long. You can't just walk away from that. You know what I mean? So it's gonna continue to call him because you could see it even when he did the thing with Sting retiring. You could see it then. He still wanted to go. You know what I mean? So
it's an eternal love. It's
yeah,
the only thing I could, you know, personally I could equate it with my love of music. It's like, you know, people ask me when is my retirement year, when will I stop, and I don't see a time where I stop because this is all I've ever wanted to do, and one of the major examples to me that I can do it for that long is right now. I always equate retirement to whenever the Rolling Stones retire. But the truth of the matter is, a person who I met, Cab Calloway, he performed until a week before his, his death. So to me, I was like, well, if I could do it that long, you know, and keep it, you know, and keep paying the bills that long through it, you know, that's how long I'm going to do it. So when I look at Flair, to speak on him, like I'm like, yeah, you know, I wish he would have retired, you know, probably around the Shawn Michaels match. But you know what? As a eternal Flairite, if you will, you know what I mean, as an eternal Horseman lover, right? Because you know, I love the Four Horsemen, always have. Um, it's nice to see him. I just, you know, it's nice to see him every once in a while because it's your hero coming out. Like people still love to see Hogan. A lot of these little kids don't know who Hogan is, but when Hogan comes out, it's still, you know, it's that superhero, you know, moment where you see Hogan come out and you see the, you know, the yellow and the red, you know, like CPR's logo, and
Absolutely.
and automatically you want to cheer. You know, you want to cheer because here comes this icon. Of professional wrestling that just makes you feel like you're a kid again.
Yeah, and for me, how I got into pro wrestling, you know, my great grandmother would watch Carlos Colon versus Abdullah the Butcher, and she would be in that rocking chair in her gown, and she just you could see her feet going up in the air, and I'm like, what is this stuff, you know? And you know, every week it was Abdullah the Butcher versus Carlos Colon, and you see Carlos Colon bleeding with the fork and all that good stuff.
Listen,
But I truly wasn't into wrestling, but I saw the reaction my great grandmother had, and I'm like, I was intrigued.
In Puerto Rico, you know, for us growing up, ECW was Extreme Wrestling. But if you ever went to any of the matches in PR, they were ECW before ECW. There was a guy named Abdullah the Butcher, Pampero Filpo, Terry Funk. Like most of his wild man ways started out there. Cactus Jack too, but Mick Foley, as everyone knows him. But like, there was a guy named Pampero Filpo who used to come out with a file, and he used to file his teeth, literally filing his teeth, as he would do his promos. But he would bring that file and he would cut the other wrestlers. He would add on to the cuts that they were receiving. And Carlos Colon was always a bleeder. So is Terry and Dory Funk. There was always bleeding. And Flair, Flair and Carlos Colon probably have no real forehead.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But the true time that I remember getting into professional wrestling was when my entire family got together to watch WrestleMania 3. And I still to this day have the cassette that we recorded, which it's 4 hours plus whatever pre-show they had back then. And that tape has been played more than anything I've ever played in my life. But I just remember that we all gathered at my father's house. My entire family was there. My uncle was the one who paid for it because my father was a little too cheap for paying $80, whatever, for the pay-per-view. But the fact that everybody was together, we were eating food, the entire family was there, and we got to see Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant, WrestleMania 3. We didn't even know the rest of the card. All we knew that was the main event, and for us, we had to watch it. So from that point on, I believe is when I truly developed this fandom for professional wrestling, and then I got into my NWAs, and I got into everything that I could get my hands on. As a matter of fact, I'm cleaning up the garage, and I have my boxes and boxes of VHS that I've been recording since 14 years of age.
Wow.
And it's just hundreds of VHS tapes. But I found the Mick Foley and Terry Funk from Japan. I found WrestleFest '94 when I went to WrestleMania in Hartford, Connecticut. But I've been a lifelong fan. That WrestleFest '94 has the Steiner brothers versus the Hart brothers in the first ever match, never televised. By
the way, like the reason I said earlier that I was older than you guys is I didn't mention this, but as a kid, I used to on the corner of 103rd and Lexington, there was this little bodega. Now it's like where you get your chopped cheese sandwiches in the city, but
right.
There used to be this bodega right there in the corner, and they used to have a little magazine rack, and on that magazine rack, I used to come every other month to get the copies of the El Santo, El Mascarado de Plata, that and Blue Demon, before there was, the Blue Demon movies and stuff like that, which CPR inspired me and AB calling ourselves Actual, because our logo is a monkey with a mask on that was inspired by Mil Máscaras. So I've always loved wrestling. And it's always been a part of me wanting to entertain, because I always saw how when WWE and NWA started with the the theme songs, or them walking out with those themes, and I was like, wow, I want to do that. I want to have a theme song when I walk out. I want it to be exciting. As you see, I'm wearing my Bloodline shirt, which means it'll take me 5 minutes now to walk out on stage for the show.
I can only imagine you doing a TK K7 show and you coming out to the theme song and acknowledge me. You know what I mean? And you have other members holding you the pro wrestling title, the freestyle title, whatever, the dance music chart title.
Yeah. I believe that wrestling is almost like a rite of passage, and it's almost there isn't a male that that at one time didn't like wrestling. Sure. Of course, just like Santa Claus, when you find out, I don't want to spoil it for anyone.
Yeah.
But just when you find out, what's behind the curtain in the Wizard of Oz, you realize, it changes your perspective on it.
Somehow, Shadow Man Matthews and Jesus right now. What do you mean? What is he trying to say? Are you saying that's choreographed? It's not real.
To me, though,
I love Shadow. He is off the wall, but he is so funny.
To finish my thought, it didn't change my perspective of it. What it made me do is appreciate it and watch it more, because now I was looking for the mistakes and the errors, and I was looking to see when they actually did get hurt, when the moves were actually painful, when they would hurt their backs, when they would miss their marks. I remember going when I first started with my wife we were dating, she took me to see The Rock and Lesnar, their first match together when Lesnar first came on, came to WWE, and it was such a big deal. And we went, I think it was Madison Square Garden. We went to Madison Square Garden to watch it. And I sat there with her counting all the misses throughout the match. And she was like, "Why do you love it?" I'm like, "I love it because there's still something exciting about what you're watching. It's still athletics. These guys are athletes. Some of these guys are a good 80% of the guys that you watch do this are former football players and who got hurt or injured or decided, that they wanted to live a little longer and thought that they were going to be less hurt. And in all actuality, in my opinion, professional wrestlers get hurt more than your average football player yearly. You know what I mean? With the exception of quarterbacks, of course, but they get hurt a hell of a whole lot.
And for a long period of time, they didn't have any time off. They would work year round every day, twice on Sunday.
Yeah.
But I want to move into the top five. I know I had you guys get together and put your top five lists of your top five favorite wrestlers of all time. It was pretty hard for me because I got a couple of honorable mentions, which I'll start with my top five. But the Latin heartthrob Al Perez was one of my favorites. And he was like Latino. He had the hairdo, the curls and stuff like that. But he had this move called the helicopter. So he would pick you up like he was going to do a razor's edge, but he would do a helicopter and just swing you and drop you on your back. And then his finishing move was like the spinning toe holds, which was like the oddest finishing move for a guy of his stature. But I was always enthralled with the Latin heartthrob Al Perez. I will also say that Terry Taylor as the Red Rooster for some reason was one of my favorites.
Really?
Yes, man, I loved it.
I mean, he took a shitty gimmick and made it work. He
Yeah,
really did.
Of course, he hated it.
That gimmick was awful, but he made it work.
Yeah,
he was a much hated heel when he was the Red Rooster.
He was great back in the other territories, NWA, and he was a television champion for the UWF, and he was great. And it's just WWE gave him a crappy gimmick, but I like the Dusty Rose with the polka dots. I like the Red Rooster with the the cock of the walk stuff. You know what I mean? Another wrestler that I really loved, and it was because he did the super kick, was Chris Adams. And I'm telling you, this is not a guy that would like sweet chin music. Really, this guy would kick you in your throat. And if you go back to the old WCCW, he would kick the Von Erich so hard. I can't believe they had an esophagus because he would kick him, and you could hear it. I mean, he did slap his thigh when he did it, but when he hit that, it looked like the most devastating thing ever. So for me, my honorable mentions are Al Perez, Chris Adams, the Red Rooster. Do you guys have any honorable mentions, people that you think about that didn't make your top five?
Huracán Castillo for me. El Santo because I was a little kid and that was Hulk Hogan before Hulk Hogan, and that showed me high flyers because that was the beginning of me watching Lucha Libre,
right.
and investing into Lucha Libre, which people don't understand is it's totally different than professional wrestling. If you see Jushin Thunder Liger, or if you see Rey Mysterio, or if you see oh my God, what the new kid, the new Dragon kid that's just Dragon Lee. Yeah. Those guys are throwbacks to that era, and Mexican wrestling is a total different experience. If you think that we're diehards as it is, Mexico's lucha libre culture, it almost eclipses America's wrestling culture because for them it is actually lucha libre is actually almost like football to them. Yeah. The love of football, and they will root for that. So that one of my honorable mentions, because I can't keep him top 5, just because of personal issues, because something personal that he did. But I just want you to know, I'm going to mention his name because he is my favorite, one of my favorite wrestlers. He would have been top 2 if it wasn't for what he did.
We're on the same page because I think I mentioned this guy to
Yeah,
Jose before we came
yeah.
on the air.
Chris Benoit. And I'm only talking about his wrestling expertise. Please don't judge me on what I'm saying. I'm only speaking about his wrestling expertise. Prior to what happened, and I agree with everyone, he is the lowest of the low, and may he burn in hell. But he was an incredible technical wrestler. I didn't understand the word technical wrestling when people used to say, "Oh, he's a technical wrestler." I didn't understand it until I started watching his matches and saw what he would do, and I really appreciated him as that, you know. And that's one of the guys who didn't make it for me.
Do you have any honorable mentions, Angel Mena?
Well, obviously, we had spoken before. I was going to say Chris Benoit, but I thought that would get me canceled immediately. So
Well,
I was like,
how can you cancel somebody who's already canceled?
no, but still, you know what I mean? Like, it was just,
Yeah, because people are funny, and because we mention it, and
they think that we're saying he's a good person.
no,
He's a piece of trash.
Absolutely
You
not.
know what I mean? He's a monster. You know what I mean?
Absolute
But
monster.
when you speak about his talent in the ring, he was, like he said, he was near the top. Like, there was nobody that can pull off the moves as crisp
And
and as
listen,
cleanly as he did.
he is, up until that moment, up until the tragedy, he was your favorite wrestler's favorite wrestler,
Mm-hmm.
because everyone, you know, even now, even when they mention him, like, you know, who was it? I saw an interview with Paul Heyman the other day. Paul Heyman was something Paul Heyman recorded like a year or two back, speaking about him, and Paul Heyman went on a tirade cursing him out, but then turned around and spoke about how good he was in the ring, and you can't take that away. You just can't take that away. Yeah, you know, kids today may never be able to see what he does, and you know, luckily they won't. But you know, before the tragedy, we all agreed that, you know, like Ziggler, he's one of those underrated. That's another guy. You know, he's one of my top. He's one of my top 6. I would put him like on my 6th, because I believe that he worked really hard to get a lot of people over, and they turned him into a jobber, which means a loser. You know, for all you non-wrestling fans, they turned him into a jabroni, if you will, right? A guy who always loses the matches, but he's really, really, really technically great at what he does. You know.
All right, so we're gonna head to our top 5 so we can talk about WrestleMania. So who do you have for number 5, Angel Mena?
Pedro Morales.
Wow.
As a young kid, obviously, I didn't see him in his prime when he won the WWF Championship, but growing up, I remember the feuds he had with Don Morocco. Those feuds were amazing. The storytelling between those two guys, you know what I mean? It was just awesome. And him being Puerto Rican, obviously, I'm Puerto Rican, so I was like, man, if he could do it, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it gives you pride in who you are and your culture, seeing someone like him, you know. And he wasn't the buffest, you know what I mean? And he wasn't the best on the mic, obviously.
No,
But
no. At that time, at that time, dad bods were cool.
this is true.
Go ahead. My bad.
No, you're right though. You're right. You know, obviously Vince is the reason why everything went 180 and everything became about muscles and everything like that. But Pedro Morales for me, number 5.
What about you, K7?
It would have to be I would agree. I would say Pedro. It was a tie to be number 5 between him and Carlos Colon. And the thing is, I made them 4 and 5 because I felt like I was being biased. I felt like I was being biased because, of course, being Latinos, being Puerto Ricans, and seeing them there, I was like, wow, I don't want to seem like I'm just rooting for the Rican, but that's how I got into it, by watching these guys do what they did.
For me, number 5, that's a slot for CM Punk. Or he either you like him or you don't like him. There's no in between. You know what I mean? Like, that's the type of person that he is. Reminds me of somebody. Yeah. It reminds me of me. CM Punk reminds me of me.
So but, are we going to change the name of the countdown to the pipe bomb?
The pipe. I think for me, after watching his interview this week with Ariel Helwani and listening to some of the things that he said, I really liked that 2-hour conversation. Not sure if you guys to hear it, but it's on the podcast, it's on YouTube. But CM Punk cemented his number 5 after watching him on that podcast. I just feel like he was very honest. I know that he took some responsibility, but some people felt that he didn't take all the responsibility that he should have taken. But again, he's a straight shooter, and he answered all the questions. I really enjoyed the interview, but it goes back for me to watching him from TNA days, being part of Raven's flock, to getting a tryout to ECW, to not belonging, to fighting and crawling his way up, to having a very strong opinion about the way professional wrestling should be, but also being a person who respects the craft and respects the old way of doing things, because people want to skate through these days, right? He doesn't want that. He wants people to earn it, and he wants to do it the traditional way. So those are some of the same values I have. He's straight edge. I am straight edge, and plus he got to marry AJ Lee. So I mean, who am I to judge, right?
It's lucky him.
Right. So let's head to number 4. Who do you have, Kay?
Carlos Colon.
Wow.
Carlos Colon is number 4 for me. So like I said, it was a tie between him and Pedro Morales. Carlos Colon Sr. Is the person I believe I rooted most for as a kid. I think that I felt the Boricua pride. Like, I felt like I would stand on, and the Pachimbi sang on top of the chairs, and the chair would fall back, and I would fall, my uncle would be like, "Carajo está pasando, Luisito?" Like yelling at me, because I was like rooting, like, oh my God, get him. And they were standing feet away from me, and I just felt like, oh my God, like seeing him bleed and seeing him win matches where he was like cut up and all bloody. I was like, but he would come out on top, made me feel like I could do anything, made me feel like no matter what, I can make it through. So I chose him as my number 4. He really should be part of my 3, but but again, I didn't want to be biased. So, my final 3 will be totally different.
A lot of great Latin wrestlers right now: Damian Priest, Karrion Kross, just a lot of people. I love Selena Vega. I ordered the Selena Vega
bathing suit. You ordered the Selena Vega bathing.
Not the bathing suit.
You opened up that door so wide open.
As soon as he did, I'm like, here I
go. I thought it was a great representation of being Puerto Rican, Boricua, where she had that event last year with Bad Bunny, and she came out with the Puerto Rican flag, and she opened that up, and so they have a special edition figure set for Mattel that hasn't been released yet, but you have to pay for it like a year in advance. So I did. I paid for it a year in advance. It's the entire LWO, and it has Selena Vega with the Puerto Rican flag. And as soon as I saw the Puerto Rican flag, I don't care how much it was,
Oh
I was
wow, that's
buying it.
awesome. That's
And
awesome.
so it has the entire LWO. It has Rey Mysterio, Santos Escobar when he was in the LWO, and then the other two people. One of them is not even Latino. But
Do you know?
from
Yeah,
go ahead.
it's funny. We both mentioned Ray. Ray, I met Ray during my honeymoon. I met Ray and Dominic during my honeymoon. Dominic had to be like 5 years old. Um, and we went to our honeymoon in Hawaii, and I'm walking the beach, about to get into this catamaran to do a cat. I hate catamarans. First of all, I don't want to be in the water. I'm petrified of a boat sinking. That the Titanic is like,
Right.
I can't hear Celine Dion sing the song because I feel like I'm sinking. Anyway,
It's happening.
uh, um, so it's funny, and then I go on all these cruises, right? But
Yeah.
I'm on the beach and I'm walking, and Ray is I can tell it's him as we're walking closer. I'm like, babe, I know that guy. I know his tats. My wife is like, why you know his tattoos for? I'm like, babe, I know this guy. And he turns around and I go, Ray, and he goes, and he shakes my head. He goes, don't say nothing. And I'm like, and I walk by and I introduce him to my wife, and he shakes my hand and he introduces me to his son. Little did I know that was going to be Dominic. But I have a picture from my honeymoon from the catamaran of Ray playing on the beach with Dominic without his mask or nothing on, and I'm like, wow, I could have given these to the cheat, to the dirt sheets,
Yeah.
and, to show Ray's face, but I would never do that. I know.
I recall having some moments like that. Like I met Kane at a pizzeria here in
Yeah.
Springfield. I remember Zeus, Tiny Lester,
Yeah.
Debo. He was playing the role of Zeus, and he was at the Springfield Civic Center. And he came out. He was slobbering, but he looked at me. I looked at him. We connected. I did the sign. He did the sign back, and I'm like, "Oh, we connected." But I'm like, I'm gonna throw up now because I can see the drool and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's great when you have those kind of moments. Let's go with number 4. Did we do number 4 already?
We did number 4.
Did.
You did? He didn't say his number 4.
The Rock is number 4 for me.
I didn't say my number 4 either.
Okay, well, you can say your number 4 as well. But Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, it's my favorite. Number 4. Very nice to see swearing in wrestling and using it correctly. I like to see the blood used correctly, and it just reminds me of old Dusty Rhodes angles, right? When he got his arm broken by the 4 Horsemen, and before they smash his entire arm, he's like, "Make it good, baby," and they smash it and stuff like that. And he's trying to fight for the NWA title. I just hope that the Cody story gets to finish correctly, because the Dusty did not get to finish correctly. Like, he got his arm broken. He did that whole speech, the dream speech that everybody
We're
quotes.
talking about the hard times.
Yeah, hard times. And he didn't win. He didn't win the title. He won the title afterwards, but it didn't mean anything, I mean, it meant something, but it just took too long to finish the story. So it's 2 years. It's time, like last year, I didn't feel that Cody deserved to win, but this year they got to finish it. And if they don't finish it, forget it. Don't worry about it. I don't want to talk about it.
For me, I have 2 wrestlers at number 4. So I actually have like a top 6. But number 4, for me, the 2 wrestlers are Sting and Undertaker. The two statesmen of their companies. You know what I mean? Like, Sting was the face of WCW, and Undertaker was everybody saved Hogan and all of that, but Undertaker, once he got to WWF, he never left. He was there, and he was a guiding force for a lot of people. He was the veteran in the back that let you know when you screwed up, and when, you know what I mean? So for me, those 2 guys are both number 4, and for that very reason. Seeing them both spend obviously we know Sting went out and he wrestled for TNA, he wrestled for WWE, and obviously he just retired with AEW. But for me, Sting will always be the WCW Sting, going from the Surfer Sting to the Crow Sting. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's
they were
Sting
both
for me.
They were both mainstays, and if WCW was still open, he would still be there. He wouldn't have gone
Yeah,
anywhere.
yeah.
Agree.
Yeah. All right, so
My-
let's get to number 3.
My number 3 is a tie too, and I'm glad that you said it first. Okay. No, but it's different. Mine's is different. Mine's my 3 is Sting and Stone Cold. Sting, because like every single incarnation of Sting was something entertaining for me. I like I said, when I fell in love with the NWA, he had come in as Surfer Sting. And I was like I didn't ever want to go back to WWE and root for Hogan, because somehow this guy made face paint and you know and blonde hair look cool. Like I think I held on to my flat top a little longer, because Sting had a flat top for a minute too. I I ain't, I ain't gonna lie to you. In fact, let me tell you something. I got this. I got a picture. I made a Four Horseman jacket, and I have a picture that I had an autograph that I had signed. I think it was me and George had done something, and that picture I didn't even write KL on it. I put Sting, thinking that I was Sting at the time. Yo, George, ask George. George will tell you. It was a moment where I lived and breathed Sting. I thought that guy was the thing. Stone Cold, to me, it was what I loved about Stone Cold is the and pardon my English, the part of my French, excuse me, that I don't attitude of Stone Cold was everything to me. Like I would be on WCW, and yo, he's on. My friends would call me just to see what he's gonna do. What is he gonna do to McMahon? And that was the flip. That was me flipping back and forth until Hall and Nash came over. And when Hall and Nash came, came over, I was like, "That's it. Now I don't have to change the channel all the time." You know what I mean? Until the war started getting a little intense later on. But those two for me are number 3, and I'll leave it there.
Who's your number 3, Angelina?
Dusty Rhodes.
Woo!
And that is when I tell you who my top 2 are, it'll make sense. If it wasn't for the top 2, he would have been number 1. And promo wise, he was on another planet. He could cut a promo on a bologna sandwich. The guy was on the mic phenomenal. He was past dad bod. Like he was, he was your everyman. And that is what people loved about him. They could see themselves in him when he was wrestling. You know what I mean? He didn't do all the high flying stuff, but he told a story when he was in the ring, and you believed what he was doing when he was in the ring. And obviously when he spoke, you just stood there and just took all of whatever he was saying. You just soaked it all in.
Let me tell you, I have thrown so many bionic elbows in my childhood. I have dropped elbows on my brothers. It's just I love dropping those elbows. Dusty, just the maneuvering, and it's just a simple elbow. It's not like the guy did a Canadian destroyer for a finisher, right?
Right.
It was just an elbow, and then he would just do this back and just drop the elbow. Amazing.
I dislocated my cousin Omar's knee trying to do a figure 4.
The Dusty figure 4 or the Flair figure 4? Because Dusty had this figure 4 where he would just grab your leg. He would do if he was tying a shoe and he put the leg under and then do the figure 4. Like it was very quick. It wasn't Flairish at all.
Flair had a little bit of give. I just tried to do it a lo salvaje. Because we kids, we know what we're doing, bro. Yo, I would have to come out into the marquesina. She'd be like, "¿Qué tú haces, man?" Yo, anyway.
I've been a fan number 3, Stunning Steve Austin, when Stunning Steve Austin came with Lady Blossom to WCCW, I was like, man, it was cool, man. It was just the coolest thing. And then he came to WCW. He was the United States champion, and I still have the United States championship here because of Stunning Steve Austin. Like, I loved it. And then when he shaved his head, it was the ringmaster. I was like, wow, what happened here? Like, I saw so much potential with Stunning Steve Austin, especially with the Hollywood Blondes and seeing him with Brian Pillman. But then when he became Stone Cold, bro, that's just another level. And, you forget the athleticism and how great he was at Stunning Steve. So when he did some of the things that he did at Stunning Steve at Stone Cold, you're like, oh, I can't believe he went over the top rope that way or whatever the case may be. But it's Stunning Steve, right? But for me, Stone Cold just forever will be on my top 5. He was number 1 for a while. But, you start thinking about how much did he mean to you. For the Attitude Era until now, he would be my number 1, right? But I'm an '80s kid, right? So I got to go back to the '80s for my number 1. So that's what I'll say about that. We'll get to number 2. Kay, you wanted to start and you want to add?
I when he was in NWA for that brief period of time where his hair started receding and he had the blood. I really couldn't. I couldn't.
When he was in
good.
the Dangerous Alliance.
Yeah, man. I couldn't. I wanted to like him. I really didn't like. I didn't really. He didn't get over on me until he came to WWE. And
what you got to go back. I just ask you go back and watch matches with him and Beautiful Bobby, where I think he took the title from him.
Bobby Eaton,
the TV title, which Bobby Eaton, the best leg drop of all time, some of the best elbows of all time, and the punches of all time. Like Bobby Eaton was like super one of the best, right? He would be in my top 20. Midnight Express. If we do a tag team one, we got to do one.
Oh yeah, tag team one is.
but the one thing that I will say is the matches that he had were excellent. They ruined it when they allowed Hacksaw Jim Duggan to beat him in 30 seconds. That's when the downfall came, right? You gotta go back and watch.
By the way, I think that I know that we haven't even gotten to WrestleMania, but I think that we should do another one of these like next week to discuss everything that happens this weekend. But go ahead.
Yeah. I'm down for
that. So let's go to number 2. Angel, what do you have for number 2?
Number 2, I have Hulk Hogan. And just he helped WWF become the monster company that it became in the 80s. And then he went and did that again with WCW and the NWO.
Mm-hmm.
That NWO swerve was everything.
Epic.
The man he was the ultimate face. You know what I mean? That's like, that's not something that you would ever think. And when it happened, I was like, oh, okay.
That was the greatest angle for me of all time, but I love it when he was coming to the ring, Bobby the Brain Heenan goes, is he the third man? And people must have been looking at him like, will you shut up?
Idiot.
Because I can tell you, they got me with that swerve. I never thought for a moment until Bobby said, is he the third man? And I'm like, he is the third man. It all clicked. And then when he just pushed the referee back and did the leg drop on Macho, I was like, oh my God. And then it just, after the race.
Oh my God. So, honorable mention that I didn't mention, Randy Macho Man Savage. And I will have to add Hogan to an honorable mention because you guys are absolutely right. What he did for professional wrestling, he has to be mentioned. But my number 2, it would have to be The Rock. And the reason I mentioned The Rock is because The Rock took the entertainment level of wrestling to a whole different level. The trash talking, like next to Flair, I think that The Rock is probably one of the greatest promo kings of all times, because no one could cut a promo, could turn around and like make fun of another wrestler or take another wrestler to
I think,
yeah.
I think CM Punk could go jab for jab.
Yeah, but I think that there's difference, because The Rock would turn it into a song, and he would, he would hit you with the serious, trash talking thing, but then he would turn it into a song. Then he would turn it into a comedy routine. When I see Punk, and I love Punk, I'm not gonna say I don't like Punk. Punk would be probably in my top 10, right? Well, he'd definitely be in my top 10. He'd probably be my like 7 or 8, to be honest, right? Because of that one technique that he has of being that guy and being the I want to call him the Wolverine, and of professional wrestling, because next
That's
to
a good analogy, though.
right,
That is a
because
good one.
it's like the best at what there is, and I'm not trying to take it away from Bret Hart, but like he is that guy, for what I believe is wrestling. Now, but The Rock can make you laugh, think, and get you angry at the same time, where this guy just makes you angry, so I looked at the evolution of The Rock becoming an actor as it's like it has to happen. We're gonna lose him to Hollywood. He's that good. And coming back now to turn heel, he's taken, and now he's giving you all those things that that old heel Rock was when he used to be a heel back in the day. He wasn't as good as he is now. He's 10 times better than he was. And I don't think, except for like 1 or 2 returning matches, to me, he hasn't missed a step.
Yeah,
So
and I appreciate him more now than I'd rather have him as a heel than what he did a few months ago with the Punjabi superstar over there, and when
Jinder Mahal.
with Jinder Mahal, where
Yeah.
it was okay, what I mean, but this heel bad guy,
Dude, when
don't
he
mess with my
slapped
family.
Cody, he slapped Cody, I was like, okay, this is what we're talking about.
Yeah.
This is what we want.
And then he started swearing immediately. You correct this. You don't mess with my family. And we'll talk about WrestleMania in a few minutes. But that's a great pick. For me, my number 2, I got a chance to get a T-shirt when they debuted. And I was on Superstars of Wrestling when I was a kid with the Razor Ramon shirt on. And to me, so, people think, oh, you just like Razor Ramon. I've been a Scott Hall, Diamond Stud, supporter, right? When Diamond Dallas Page introduced the Diamond Stud, I was like, that guy looks like Maniac Cop. He had the jaw, he had the facial, he looked like a superstar. And then he did the Razor's Edge, right? And when he did the Razor's Edge, he just got me. And then when he went to WWE and became Razor Ramon, I knew that he wasn't Latino, but what he meant to the Latino and the Scarface and the arrogance and just the bad accent, of course. But to me, I was just enthralled, right? I just became a big Razor Ramon fan. Of course, I love the Savio Vega TNT. Savio Vega came to be his friend. That was really cool.
Savio.
Yeah.
Have you seen Scott Hall in before he became the Diamond Stud?
Absolutely.
Yo. First off, Matt, that mustache.
Yeah. He was a former AWA tag team champion with Kurt Hennig. He was in the AWA.
Wow.
So, yeah, I'm sure that people may not know the evolution of Scott Hall, but when he showed up at WCW as the first guy, and he jumped that railing, and you know who I am, but you don't know what we're doing here. You know what I mean? And it's like, so this is where the big boys play. Yeah, it's just great stuff. I know that he had some hard times, but seeing him in the Hall of Fame and talk about bad guys don't last, whatever the case, the quote may be. But just when he passed, it really affected me because it just recalled every single little thing that I enjoyed about that character, that I enjoyed about the human being, the person. No matter what the trials and tribulations were, I just really loved Scott Hall. I really loved Razor Ramon. He was everything to me.
He that angle, the NWO angle is probably, it's funny because I have a friend who introduced me to X-Pac, and I was talking to X-Pac on the phone on live one time, and he asked me, I said, I liked your stuff. He goes, oh, you liked me when I was a 1, 2, 3 kid? I said, no. I really liked you. I really liked you in WCW. It's like, he goes, why? I'm like, because for me, I think the best angle ever in professional wrestling was the NWO. Even though it lasted a bit too long, like I'm worried that they're gonna do to the Bloodline now. I love that angle so much. I just thought, wow, it's like you didn't know what to expect week in and week out. You didn't know who was gonna turn. I just and it, I get mad because I wish that they at some point I wish that they hired better writers because they could have turned that into something really good. And then when I also thought that when WWE bought WCW, that they were going to turn that angle back on its head and bring it back to WWE and make it that much better because they had better writing, but they never did. They let it became like a faulty gimmick that wasn't really going to work.
Yeah, it just a lot of the people had guaranteed contracts like Sting and Goldberg and the big stars had guaranteed contracts. So they're like, you know what, I'm just gonna sit home and collect the check. I don't need to do anything because Warner Brothers is the one paying me. You know what I mean?
I'm kind of mad at us because there's a couple of people that we haven't mentioned, and I'm sure that in our top one, our final one, I know that they're not going to mention. So I want to mention a couple of people. I want to mention Eddie Guerrero, because he's fantastic. He's always been fantastic. Who was the other person? Oh my God. Hold on. I got freestyle brain, so I can't remember.
If you want to stop for
Mick Foley.
Yeah, Mick Foley. But earlier on, I wanted to make a point about Eddie Guerrero and Art Barr, the juicer in WCW. He dressed like Beetlejuice, Art Barr, right? But he couldn't use the gimmick. But when they were together in Mexico as the heels, Art Barr and Eddie Guerrero were amazing. They had a hair match, and they had to shave their heads because they lost. And it was a tag team match. I'm not sure if you ever watched it, but if you ever find it, it's an amazing tag team match. Art Barr, the juicer, and which Eddie Guerrero's son Dominic Mysterio has dressed up as
Art Barr. God, this guy, Eddie Guerrero's son.
Yo,
Dominic Mysterio has.
And the other two people is we haven't mentioned the Cerebral Assassin, and I really doubt any of you guys have him there. And we haven't mentioned Shawn Michaels, who for most people outside of us consider him like the GOAT.
To me, he is and will always be that top guy. And when he retired or he lost that last match to The Undertaker, for me, it was like I remember watching him wrestle Flair for the first time in a wrestling challenge match. It was a special occasion where, or Superstars, one of those two, but it was like a special presentation on the USA Network. And I remember that Shawn jumped from the inside of the ring over the corner of the right-hand side and did a high cross body on Flair. And he was a tag team wrestler with Marty Jannetty, Rockers, the Rockers, right? As the Rockers, the greatest betrayal of all time. But that was before the betrayal, and he was a babyface, and he was a tag team wrestler with Flair. And Flair got the best match out of him that I had ever seen, and that's when I truly became a big fan of him. But yeah, man, Shawn Michaels is that guy.
And we didn't mention Cena or Bret Hart. The
Yeah.
hell.
but here's the thing, like those are people that I enjoyed in spurts in parts of wrestling. Like Cena as the rapper that would come out and diss someone. I love that Cena. I love the rapping. I love when he used to diss people, and I love that, you know. But The Rock did it better, right? Because The Rock did his own version of that rap where he would crack on people, and there's the my name is Kane, and you know, he would mock Kurt Angle and Steve Austin. So yeah, man, Cena wasn't mentioned, and Cena is just one of the greatest of all time. Just didn't make my list. And if I were to do a top 20, maybe he'll be on it, but not on my top 10 of all time. We haven't mentioned Flair. Anybody choose Flair?
You already know where Flair's going to be. That's number one.
To me, so here we go. Here we go to one, and I'll start off. The greatest wrestler of all times to me is Ric Flair. Ric Flair, like, I think he's the epitome of a heel. And even when they tried to turn him face, he still stayed with his gimmick of heel. And the sliminess of him would come through, and you were like, oh my God. And there was no one else as good at being bad than Flair. And you liked it so much that you wanted to style and profile. I mean, he turned the rap industry on his head. That's why most rappers are talking about what they wear and what they do, because Ric Flair has been that type of influence to them. He's like, I don't know. And in the ring, no one can hand off a chop or take a chop like he can. He, you know, when he's gonna go over the top and pretend that he got hurt, he'll entertain the crap out of you. He's like, you know, things that he does with those with the ring ropes, you know, when he gets a hit and he goes over it pretending that he's hurt and then he falls flat on his face, you know, those face plants that he does, bro.
I recall when Ricky the Dragon Steamboat beat him for the title, right? And then there was a rematch, and we knew he was going to get that title back, but we knew how cool Ric Flair was when everyone was cheering for him, who was the heel, and no one was cheering for Ricky the Dragon Steamboat because he brought his wife and the kid.
Yeah.
And they were like, I don't want my wife here. You know what I mean? With the kid, you know, and then Flair has like 10 blonde women with him. So,
yo.
Is he also your number one, Angel Mena?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt. I mean, what he's done in his career from the beginning, and when you see the pictures of him before the plane crash and the adapting that he, you know, losing the weight, because he was bigger, so losing the weight and becoming the wrestler that he became, and just the mouth on him, like this guy could piss off anybody. Like, he was so disrespectful, but in a good way. You know what I mean? Like, you wanted to see him.
And the one thing that we got to give Dusty and Rick and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat credit for is, more than the wrestlers that we watch today, those guys used to do 90-minute matches, hour-long matches. It was like marathons. Like, they were practically half a pay-per-view.
One of my favorite matches is
for a
Ric
match.
Flair Sting Clash of the Champions.
Oh my God!
When him and Sting went at it to the time limit, like
the first one, 45-minute draw.
That was crazy.
And then the only time that I found myself really cheering for Ric Flair back in the 80s was when Terry Funk pile drove him and allegedly broke his neck, and he was a good guy. Right, and then the final moments of him and Shawn Michaels, when Shawn Michaels says, I love you. And then he kicks him and he pins him. Man, if you didn't cry when he got pinned, you know. But then, you know, afterwards he's wrestling in TNA. He's wrestling in right. So it's like, yeah, whatever. But, you know, my number one is not Ric Flair. My number one is Hulk Hogan. So it shows the the two NWA supporters here and the WWE supporters, right? So
But I had Hogan at number 2.
let's talk
So
television.
I didn't even have them. I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry to leg drop your boy.
I was here in Massachusetts, and I got to see Hogan fight Mr. Perfect. I have never heard a sound like I heard that day when people were cheering for him. The Springfield Civic Center was full, and he beat Mr. Perfect by countout, I believe, right? But when he stayed to pose, that place was bananas. And then when he did the sign that I want my belt back, my title back, the World Wrestling Federation Championship, everybody even got louder. And I just remember, again, going back to WrestleMania 3 and seeing him wrestle Andre, and how in the first few seconds, Andre lands on him and they count. And I'm like, oh my God, he's going to lose already, you know? But then seeing him, that match is probably one of the worst matches of all time with the sound off, like people say. But with the sound on, that to me is the greatest. And then when WrestleMania 6 came along and he lost to the Ultimate Warrior, which we haven't discussed either, and he missed the leg drop and he splashed him and pinned him, bro, you know. But to me, Hulk Hogan for me is the greatest of all time. And you know, that's my list.
Can I tell you something?
Sure.
They say never meet your heroes because they'll let you down. So I got a chance to meet Ric Flair, and Ric Flair did drops for my 10th anniversary with my wife.
Oh,
and
wow.
and when I met him, I stood 3 feet away from him, acting like you know, like young girls used to act when they used to see us, you know, me as a kid. And I'm like,
I like how he corrected himself. He said,
right,
how they used to see me. Never
right.
us.
How they used to, when in the
I know what
heyday
you mean.
in
I
the
know what
heyday
you
of the
mean.
group, they used to
Yeah.
stand there, and I had I had no clue, because all I wanted to do, I'm gonna be 100. All I wanted to do was get laid back then, so I wasn't really paying attention. I just saw that they were like staring at me with googly eyes, right? So I thought that I was the king of the world. But here I am standing 3 feet away from Ric Flair at a table where he's signing books, and I'm just standing there. There's no one behind me, and I'm too afraid to take the 2 steps forward to stick my hand out to shake it. I'm like, oh my God, I'm standing feet away from my idol. It was like the beginning of a Snickers commercial. You know, somebody comes over to you and gives you a Snickers. Well, my boy came over to me and handed me a drink and was like, here, drink this. And that's how I got loose, got back to normal. But later on in the night, it was my friend works for Hennessy, and they were doing a Hennessy event, and we were at a steakhouse in the city, and he comes, and Flair's supposed to sit there in front of all these execs and and high ranking people at Hennessy, and they're supposed to he's supposed to tell stories about his wrestling and how things were for him. So he cries talking about his son. He cried talking about Charlotte. He talked about the plane crashing. And like the grown men are in the room crying along with Flair, and Flair cries for anything now, right?
Right.
Flair cries at the drop of a hat now. So he's telling these stories. I'm there, and like afterwards, he comes by, and each table had a bottle of Hennessy, an XO bottle. There was, the Hennessy XO bottles, and he would sign it. So he came by me, and I was like, he says, you were scared to talk to me. And I was like, yeah, I was scared to talk to you. I said, but if I'm a little drunk now, but is it okay if you do a drop for my wife? I just, it's our 10th wedding anniversary. And my wife's name is Yilda, but I call her Jill because that's a Starbucks name, right? And it's easier to say than Jilda, because everybody messes it up. So I said, could you just say Jill? So he does this entire drop shitting on me, saying, why the hell you married this guy? I don't know. And he does the woo and everything. And I'm just sitting there while he's crumbing me like this. And I'll tell you, I met him there, and I met him. I saw him one time right here at American Dream, right down the road from me. He signed an action figure of his, and both times I was like, yo, it's him and Muhammad Ali for me. They're the greatest of all times for me. So
So I just wanted to say that the same way that you felt about Ric Flair is the same way that I felt about you when I first met you for the first time. I was so
really,
I was so timid to come
He's
and see
not the
you.
only one, bro. When I
really,
met you in Rochester the first time, first off, when Jose called me that afternoon and was like, "Hey, Kay's gonna be in Rochester and he wants to talk to you. He wants to meet you." I was like, "Who?" He was like, "K7." I was like, "For real?" I was like, "Nah, you fucking with me, right?" Excuse my language. I was like, "Nah, you fucking with me." And he's like, "No." And then you called me, and I was like, "Oh, wow." Like, okay. And but Jose knows I've been a huge K7 fan
thank you,
No,
man.
throughout
I,
everything that's ever happened in the business. I always say,
I,
you're the
I,
man. You know what I mean? So there's just no.
I, I appreciate that. The funniest thing to me is, um, I never. It's funny, but I never saw, I never saw myself like people see me. And it's weird, like, yeah, like we walk out, you get the big pop and everybody will scream, but I think that they're not even screaming for us walking out. I usually think that they're screaming for the music, right? Because they're going to get what they want. So and my mom was always big on telling me that this is a job, so just look at it as a job. So somehow, some way, I found I try to stay within the boundaries of humble. you know and I love to have people around me that pop my balloon to bring me down to earth. I I never want to think of myself as something that I'm not. I never want to turn around and start, it's not a jab, even though it's going to sound like a jab, but I don't want to glorify myself to the point where I think that I'm better than, and I don't think that I'm better than. I'm just like, I make a joke about it on stage. I'm just happy to be a Puerto Rican with a job for this long. You know what I mean?
Listen, you
So
you've put in the time, you've put in the work. You know what
yeah,
I mean? There's not a lot of people that have the dedication that you have. You stepped away, became K7, and did the whole thing with K7 and the Swing Kids, and then you came back, and it was like you didn't miss a beat. I was like, just mother, like, what is going on right now?
so
you know,
I just want to interrupt for a moment. Are we acknowledging him?
Oh,
no, 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 no,
absolutely.
no, no, no. I don't want to be acknowledged. I don't want to be acknowleded. I don't want to be acknowledged. No, no.
I'm
Listen,
just, is that
real
what we're
quick,
doing here? Because
real
this is
quick
pro
though,
wrestling.
real
This is
quick though.
pro.
I've met wrestlers though that have let me down. I'll be honest with you. I just met Santana from Santana and Ortiz. Great guy, fantastic guy. His family's wonderful. Great dude. Met Braun Strowman. Great guy. Stood, talked to me for like 4.5 minutes. Great person. Met Mercedes Monet and was extremely disappointed at what I met and who I met.
She's been known not to like to meet her fans. So
Bro, I was so disappointed in meeting her. And I was like, and I was like, is it because she's playing heel right now? But I'm like, all I said, I just said, hey, I just wanted to shake your hand. I said, if it's possible, not a big deal. If you can't, we don't have to. If I didn't even say you know, and and she was like, she looked at my hand like my hand was disgusting. She looked me up and down and was like, and just took off her glasses and took off her glasses. I put up my camera, put her glasses back on, and I took a picture with her. And I was like, I walked away
Yeah,
from her
like
going, this
that.
stank. Her. The funniest thing is, I was at the airport when I met her and Braun, and then who's the guy that used to play Kurt Angle's kid?
Oh,
Who's that
Jordan.
wrestler?
Jordan.
Jordan.
Jason Jordan.
Jason
Hmm.
Jordan passed by me and gave me the Puerto Rican head nod, like, and I gave him the Puerto Rican head nod back. And then they moved my flight towards the gate that they were at, and I walked over, and because Mercedes Monet had given me an attitude, Charlotte was there. I didn't go up to Charlotte. Alexa Bliss was there, and I didn't go to Alexa Bliss. and I was like, you know what? I don't want no more attitude.
Yeah,
I
that's
just gave
crazy.
up.
But
The
she's
funny
known
part,
for not.
yeah, the funny part about this whole thing is, right, if the guy from one of my favorite shows, Wrestling Soup, is listening, and you talked about Mercedes Moné the way you just did, you just made a bigger fan out of Joey Numbers because he's the co-host that knows your
Yeah.
music, and
Oh,
he talks the same way about Mercedes Moné, the same way, same interaction, same way.
you know who I bought? You know who I bought masks from?
Who?
I bought masks from the Honky Tonk Man. The Honky Tonk Man sold me a Santos mask,
Yeah.
and he sold me a Rey Mysterio mask one time. I did an event with
Oh
them.
wow.
Yeah. He was really nice.
So
Honky Tonk
listen,
Man was really nice.
everybody share their list. Before we get going and to the WrestleMania predictions and thoughts, did you guys get a chance to watch the Bray Wyatt documentary?
I just watched it today. And I want you to know, I text you. I text CPR around, I think it was 4 o'clock. I was crying like a little girl watching this documentary. I was touched. I love Bray Wyatt. And there was moments where he'd piss me off and I didn't like him for a minute, but that's what a good wrestler is supposed to do: piss you off and you know, make you cheer and make you hate him at the same time. And I saw how much love he put into what he does, and how much he loved his family. So I saw myself within him. So I was like, wow, you know, that could be me. What if I wasn't here for my kids? And I love what I do so much. I take the time out to plan out what we were gonna wear, and how the show's gonna come out. And
The creativity is similar,
and I'm worried how we all look as a community, and so when I saw when I saw myself within his story, it touched me even more. Not only because was one of my favorites too, but like to see that, and to see it end the way that it ended, and to see all the wrestlers that we adore, talk about him so highly, and it be narrated by one of the GOATs, which is the Undertaker. I'm sitting there going, wow, man, like, wow.
Yeah, I have
It
to
was
agree.
very well done.
I have to agree with your assessment of it, and it was a great documentary. I can't wait to watch it again. But he just seemed like a really, really good guy. Very creative. The Bray Wyatt gimmick is amazing.